Tonight we have something a little bit different for you, a little special treat along the way. But just before I invite my friends up, I just wanted to plug really quickly. Tonight in Interact 3, I'm going to be there myself, and I'm going to be sharing a story. Yeah, woo! I'm going to be sharing a story, a journey that I've been on. I recently spent a little bit of time in Kenya. I did, but then I went and spent some time in Turkey. And it was an eye-opening experience, challenging but beautiful. And I want to come and share with you guys a little bit of what that looked like to travel there, to live there for a short period of time, what that meant to me. And I would love to share that experience with you guys and inspire you with what God is doing in that place. So if you want to come and Interact 3 to the next Move tent, I'd love to see you there and chat with you guys and share with you guys my experience that may stir something in your heart. Or if you've always been interested in that sort of space, I know you guys got a taste of that today, which was awesome. Who enjoyed the missions spot? Missions time today. Awesome. Amazing. Awesome. I heard some amazing testimony and just like some great reports from that, so it's awesome. But I'm going to be there this evening, and so if you want to hang out, we're going to be there in Interact 3. So anyway, that's all for that. So right now, I'm going to invite my friends, Dan and Sarah, who are going to join with me. They're probably going to take another minute. Yeah, we're going to come up now. Sorry. We're in TeenStreet. What we have done, who's been to TeenStreet before and remembers 4 stools? Yeah? The 4 stools is a chance for us to chill things out a little bit, relax a little bit. It's kind of like sitting in a lounge room. We get to chat, talk about life a little bit more, get to hear from people in a more relaxed environment, less structured. And tonight we don't have 4 stools, but we've got 3 stools. Will that work for us? Do you guys?
Yeah,
is that going to be okay? We're going to make it work. Oh, we got a 4th one. There we go. And we're just going to kind of take a moment to debrief the week so far.
Yeah. And
kind of do a bit of a highlight reel as to what God has been doing in our hearts through this Exodus series, what has stood out for us personally, maybe share some things that we may not have gotten to in the actual prepared sessions, and just kind of chew the fat a little bit. So, I know it's been a journey that we've been on in getting the Exodus series ready, but what are your kind of immediate takeaways around this series?
Yeah, this is always a dangerous thing to do because we do, when we're doing comms meetings, the conversations do tend to go a bit wild. So we'll try and, if we can, it's pretty hard to rein it in. Something that stood out to me, I guess, in God's equipping that the second day, so we did God's plan, then God's equipping, is I think around the issue of how do we navigate life as young people when we've got to make big decisions. We saw in the story of Moses is that he went out to for 40 years. So he's 40 years, he grew up in Pharaoh's household, and then he commits that murder and he tries to do things in his own strength, and God has to do a work in his heart, and then he goes 40 years out in the wilderness. And just this idea of how do we navigate decision-making in life? Because I know a bunch of you are going, well, how do I hear God's voice? How do I make wise decisions? Or is there going to be a moment in my life where I just get this direct download and like, yep, all right, now's the time for me to go here or there, or this is the uni degree I should be applying for, or this is the specific direction I'm going on. I don't know, like I just wonder if there's things that we've been processing around that particular area of how do we work with God's economy?
Yeah, I guess I can share that story that I shared with you guys earlier about God's equipping. There is great timing in God's equipping, as in like he is always on time with what he does when he does it. And we saw that a little bit in the story of Moses, in the way that there needed to be 40 years of Moses sort of spending that time in the desert looking after sheep, and just so that God was just working in him, so that come the time where it was ready, where God was ready to have Moses step into the rescue plan, Moses was equipped. He jumped the gun a little bit when he thought, when he was 40 years old and he thought that this was the time. But when I'm not hanging out with TeenStreet and having a great time here, I work as a chaplain in a school. And when I went for that role back in 2007, the role became available for the start of the school year, so February 2007. I was volunteering for a couple of years as part of a church internship before 2007. I was also a previous student of the school, so there was a lot of checks coming when that position became available at the school that I work at. There was a lot of, everyone was like, oh, you're a shoo-in, like seriously, it makes sense. I went for the job and I didn't get it in February. It rattled me a little bit. I was just like, wait, it kind of like, God, did I hear right? Or what was going on? Like, I thought that this was just, everything was just coming into focus. But I just remember God saying to me in that moment, I just need you to pause here. Because if I'm going to call you into something, I'm going to call you in for the long run. I'm going to call you in for the long haul. You're going to be mine, and we're going to work together for a long time. And I want you to be ready with what you need before you step into that. He has equipped me definitely in the time over, but he needed to work some things out in my heart just to make sure that that particular school was where he wanted me at. I needed to be made sure of that. And I have been at that school almost 15 years now. And I guess what I have learnt in that is that God continues to equip us when we continue to walk in his plan, in his timing, and there is nothing that is wasted in God's economy.
Yeah.
Nothing. He can purpose everything. He can purpose, it was about, I think, July 2007 is when I got the job. And what that has also cemented in me is that in the 15 years that I've been a chaplain there have been some hard days. There have been some moments where I just thought, is this actually what I need to be doing? There has been tough moments. But because I had that little bit of a gap of time where I just sat and it was almost like God just put the pause button on that. And I just sat in that space. What that allowed me is that gives me great confidence now because I know I'm meant to be in that space. I know that God has made that more and more apparent. So it almost serves as like just an encouragement on those days that are hard and tough and you don't really want to get out of bed and face it. Just coming back to that story, I equipped you for this, Sarah. I have equipped you for this.
Yeah.
Get your butt out of bed.
So just a quick, I want to pick on something that you were just saying, and I want to ask you a question. If God is the one that equipped you and kind of prepared that space for you, when you have hard days, how do you know that that isn't God leading you into something else? Because when it's hard, doesn't that mean God might be not favoring it? Do you know what I mean?
It's actually interesting that you asked that, and is because I've actually was sort of processing this just recently. I guess when 15 years comes up, people are always asking, so how much longer are you going to be at the job? And I'm like, phew. And 15 years of doing a work like that, you do get exhausted. And I guess the exhaustion that I've been feeling this last little while, I'm like, all right, Lord, is this my time? Are you just telling me? And I guess what that is that in the equipping, you also need to be open to anything new that God might want to equip you in. Like, I don't want to be so set that this is what it is. I need to have the periphery, the blinkers pulled off so I can keep my eyes as to what God may be wanting me to do in other ways. I am focused on what he's called me to do, yes, but I don't want to be so focused that I miss anything else that he might call me to do. And so I guess the equipping is that, okay, come back to me. So me just processing whether or not my time at the school is finished just recently, as in like we're talking last week. So I was what that means is that I have to go back to him and just sit in that space again. It's almost like I'm doing a redo of what I did 15 years ago. And just sit in that space again and go, okay, Lord, you just need to make it clear. And praise God, he has. Just to sit in that space and be able to hear from him. Because sometimes when you're in the role, you're so in the role that you're doing, not just being.
Yeah, I love that idea of being equipped and in the role as well. I always think about, preparing for ministry or preparing for a Christian life, being like, if I get all my life lessons compacted into a short period of time, like I would do for a degree, study, and learn it all in a short period of time, and then I can go and do, that would be really convenient. But it seems like God is often more in like an apprenticeship kind of education system. You know what I mean? Has anybody done an apprenticeship of some kind? Anybody? Yeah, got a couple here. You kind of start on day one, and God's like, I know you haven't got it all together, but I'm going to give you a broom, and you're going to start by sweeping. And then I'm going to show you how to do this, and then we'll do that. And then I'm going to show you how to do this, and we'll do that. And I'm going to teach you as we're doing it, not throwing you in the deep end and I'm going to ask you to do something so absolutely absurd right on day one, but teaching you in the process. Dan, have you experienced anything kind of like that, or has it been more the other way of prepared for something and then called to go do it?
I think more and more I'm realizing as I get older how broken I am. It's funny, like when I look back on when I was like 20, 21, you think you're bulletproof.
I was.
You think, yeah, you still are. No, but not everyone can be bulletproof. But no, it's amazing. And God actually uses that youthfulness, that excitement, but and you tend to get yourself into stupid situations or you jump in the deep end. And I think that God will naturally use situations and circumstances to shape us. I heard a phrase that God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. So if he's calling you to do something, you can trust him that he will give you what you need to do that job, even though you might feel like the task is too big. I think as well, like something else that I've been just thinking about as you guys have been sharing is like when it comes to trying to discern when God is calling us, what is God saying to us in this situation? I guess just to share some practical things as far as, when you're trying to discern it, sometimes we've got to just ask simple questions like, what's God put right in front of me? If God has given me an opportunity, sometimes we're thinking, I want to do this, this, and this, and we're missing the opportunities right in front of us to be faithful. Remember how we talked about last night? He's more interested in our availability. Are we willing to be faithful in the small things, in the little things? And if we are willing to see what's in front of us and start to serve and to be a wise steward of those things, God will continue to call you into the places he wants you to be. Sometimes I wonder if we're a bit afraid that we're going to miss the boat or miss the train of what God's, which is hilarious. Like even in the story of Moses, like Moses was not going to get away from God. Like it's not like Moses would somehow go like, oh, imagine if he didn't see the burning bush that day. Like it's such a small view of God to think that, oh no, I don't want to miss out on this one opportunity. Sometimes we think that God is almost like this mean dad, and he's like, I will tell you once and once only. If you're not listening, you miss out and your life will be ruined.
Oh, I just had a flashback to school.
Oh, right. You've heard that before.
I remember when I was living up in Toowoomba as a journalist, and and I'd felt a stirring. This is the beautiful thing about God, is when he wants to speak to you, he'll speak to you, just as we've seen with Moses.
Yeah.
He'll get your attention. He's a big God. He's large and in charge, as we've been talking about. So sometimes we think he's just he's a little guy and he struggles to get through to us. That's not the God we worship. And I can remember I was really wrestling through. I felt God was calling me away from my job. And I had this counter offer. So what I felt was I wanted to go part-time as a journalist so I could go and make documentaries. And then my boss quit, who I wasn't expecting, and I was supposed to be the next in line to take over. And so I'm like, what are you saying, God? This is, I sort of felt that you were leading me away from this, and then I started to get different people speaking different things into my world. And then I can remember I was driving home after an event one night, and I was about to call someone else to get advice. What should I do? And I just felt a prompting within myself to say, Dan, you just need to hear from me. You just need to hear from me. And I was like, yeah, all right. So I didn't make the phone call. I got home about half an hour later. I was opening the Bible for my devotion. And God, by his Spirit, just dropped this word, which was a word, I think, in Isaiah, but it was basically an instruction to the exiles who were in Babylon. They'd been in Babylon for about 70 years, and he gave a very explicit word, leave Babylon. And in that situation, what God had revealed to me was that this was the time for me to leave when? The organisation I was working for. And it just jumped out at the page at me, and there was a real peace about it. God spoke to me through his word. Now, the thing I find interesting about that story is that I think God had told me multiple times. In fact, that stirring up began at the start of the year. And I think there were different steps along the way, but it sort of came to that climatic moment where God just went, bang, leave Babylon in that passage, which to me spoke, leave your job. It's time for you to step out in faith. And part of that passage was, I will provide for you. I will be with you. That was the words that were in that passage. I guess what I wanted to say in this situation is that God had been telling me for a bunch of times, and that prayer that I prayed in the car was, I just need to hear you again. Now, God is a gracious Father. The question is, do we have ears to hear? Do we have a soft heart to listen? That's the critical thing. God doesn't have a problem with talking. He's kind of good at it. He's always doing it. He's a God who speaks. The question is, am I listening? Do I have a soft heart and a willingness to listen? And if I do, I might miss it the first time. I might even miss it the second time. But he's going to get my attention at some point.
I think that's part of the conversation in prayer as well, is it needs to be, there's a listening as well as a speaking. I've always, just kind of riffing off what you're talking about, is God speaking to us. I think God is very capable to speak clearly. I think that the miscommunication happens when we fail to listen, because I think listening is a huge part of prayer. I think prayer is a dialogue with God rather than a monologue with God. We treat prayer like a monologue. We're like, dear God, this is what I want. Can you fix this? Can you bless this? Amen.
Yeah.
That's not a dialogue, that's a monologue.
Yeah.
And say, for example, out on the footy field, you and a mate were passing the footy ball back and forth, and your mate just grabbed a footy ball and kicked it at you, and got another one and kicked it at you, and got another one and kicked it at you, and got another one and kicked it at you, and walked off. You're like, well, that was lame. I want to can we go back and forth a little bit? And then you share the footy ball, you go back and forth between the two of you, and that's a dialogue between two parties. And I think prayer, we've lost a part of prayer being a dialogue with God, which is, yes, speak, but also stop and listen.
Yeah.
Speak and stop and listen. And I think shush time, maybe, just kind of thinking about it, shush time is a time where we can stop everything, stop talking, and listen to see what God might be saying in response to the things that we've laid down before him.
Yeah,
So good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we've got, Carl.
We got another, say you got 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, well, the other big thing, I guess, that we've been talking about, so it was the idea of this stepping into all that God has for us. I guess the adventure of God's supremacy, which we've been looking at, and just the joy. Like, I guess we tapped in on it a bit last night. We live in a world where there's so many gods. Now, the hard thing, this is something I've been, I guess, processing recently, is How do we, like, we're not living in Egypt. Remember how in the battle, the boxing match we had all those different gods that were listed off. It's not like we live in a culture where those gods are explicitly put out at us. And I guess just to really process, if God is the supreme one, we still live in a culture where there's all these gods that are calling out at us. How can we start to go, what are the gods? And am I worshipping a god? Because it's not as easy, I don't think, as going, oh, I'm worshipping the god Ra or Ptah or, I don't know, what were some of the others?
ISIS, remember that one?
Yeah,
don't
good
worship.
name one. Yeah, great name.
Don't worship that.
Bin chicken.
Bin chicken one.
Yeah.
Because we are living in a land full of idols. And I think one of the battles for us as Christians is how do we know what the gods are and how do we know if we're worshipping them?
Yeah. I think maybe this is a one step beyond. Maybe we should come back to maybe identifying it. But one of the things I've noticed is, I mentioned it briefly, but I want to kind of build on it because I've been chatting with one or two of you teens about this. Was when you start to touch on something, it'll bite back at you. Like if you're struggling with something like anxiety or pornography or something like that, and you're like, I'm going to try to stop that or break a cycle in that, and it like rears its head and starts to like bite back at you, that for me is a little bit of a red flag, being like, there might be a God behind this.
Yeah.
There's an idol involved.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't, it would just fall flat. You're like, I'm actually not going to do that anymore. Okay. Well, that's fine, but so often with these things that get a hold on the heart, it bites back and it hurts, and that might be a little bit of an identify, being like, there's something behind this.
I reckon that's a really helpful diagnostic tool, like to use that more medical language. But because an idol is something you worship from your heart, it's something that your heart is captured by. One of the challenges as well is that you could be your own God. In fact, the God of self is probably one of the most the insidious gods that we could worship. And I think that's a helpful diagnostic tool because we don't know, like self-worship or pride as we might call it. It's hard to point out or find, I think it's C.S. Lewis who said that it's way easier to spot pride in someone else than it is to spot in yourself.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
see it in you
brutal
all
thing
the time.
about pride. Oh, thanks. But it's true, and it sits just at the surface. And I think, how do we diagnose our hearts? Well, for example, maybe I'm just thinking of one example. If we're in a conversation and someone we don't feel is respecting us or acknowledging us. I can remember being in a conversation with someone, and there's just this person at the gym that she was at, and she was just fully burnt up. This guy just didn't give her respect or the attention that she thought she deserved. And I'm like, as I was listening, I was like, oh man, if you knew what your identity, if you came to know Christ and you started to go on a journey with Jesus and realize that he loves you and that you are valuable, deeply valuable to him, then you can actually face the world and go into those environments where people just look straight past you and don't give you the respect that maybe they're giving to others, and go, actually, I'm a child of God. And I know that my value and worth is found in Christ. He actually died for me. And so we're all of a sudden going, all right, that person doesn't like me. That person does not respect me, but I know that my identity is in Christ. Now, this is all easy to say in theory, but in the actual situation. But for example, like if we feel that like that's being pushed on, that might be a sign of a form of self-worship, for example.
How could you imagine? How could I ever think that my life isn't about me? Like my life could be about somebody else.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's a self. You know, the self is on the throne, and I think that's the biggest hindrance to Jesus taking that throne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one thing that stands out in regards to knowing who or whose you are as opposed to who you are. We were reflecting on it earlier about the midwives in the Exodus narrative. We didn't expand on that a whole lot when we were talking up front, but what we see is a group of women who know who they are and whose they are. They know their identity. And so when they were asked to do something dreadful, they knew that their eyes were lifted, not on the threat, but they were lifted to the God who is greater than the threat. Their fear was in God and not in man. They did not fear Pharaoh because they knew who God was. And so Pharaoh could come at them and do whatever, but it didn't faze them because they knew who God was. And I think that there's a lot of significance in that for us, is that if we know whose we are, we can walk into like tricky situations. We can walk into the hard stuff, but not be fazed by it. We can walk there with the confidence of knowing whose we are and knowing that we are on the same team as the I am who I am God. And that is significant in this day. That's really significant.
Yeah. And you were talking about the fear of God being a real key in transforming our worldview and the way that we live as Christians. You know, being a follower of Jesus isn't just like be a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's not what a Christian is.
Yeah.
If you were to describe a Christian, it's like, well, a Christian's a really good person.
Yeah.
Like, no. That's not a biblically accurate picture of what a Christian is.
Yeah.
A Christian is living on a whole other plane of reality, living for something else rather than living for these things that everyone else is really concerned with. And how do you get from being concerned with all these things, which is what everybody, money, success, power, friendship, all those sorts of things, how do you stop being concerned with these things and start to see another plane of reality? And you were talking about saying that the fear of God is that process.
Yeah. Well, the book of Proverbs, which is a wonderful book to get stuck into. It's wisdom literature. And if you haven't read the book of Proverbs in the Bible, there's so much gold in that. But one of the core nuggets of truth that you will find in there is that the beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So what does it mean to fear God? Well, the fear that we're talking about is not the fear of running away. You made reference to Aslan before. It's amazing when you're in the presence of something perfectly good and powerful and strong. And that fear is actually, it's a fear that draws you to and to obey, to want to do what that being is calling us to. And so the power of what happens within the life of a believer who truly fears God means that they are mobilized and enabled to be used by God in powerful ways. When you meet someone who truly fears the Lord, they are less affected by the fear, what we call the fear of man, the fear of what people think. And this is one of the challenges that we face in a world where Christians are constantly put into boxes and called all sorts of names. Like we're bigots, we're outdated, we've got no value, we're sort of pushed to the side, misunderstood, even persecuted in different ways. Some of you are in schools and you're like, man, this is hard, really hard. But the fear of the Lord actually enables you to walk through life and to love people. Because when you think about it, when you fear people more than God, you're constantly just trying to please them, and you'll never be able to please them. You can't please everyone. But we know that when we fear God, He's calling us to love, and that because God is love. That's who He is. That's what the Bible says. God is love. And so if we are going to grow as disciples of Jesus, that's an area, I think, a really practical area to start to process. Am I more afraid of what people think than I am about what God wants and what God thinks?
That's huge.
It's a real challenge for us. And then how do we foster that culture, that relationship that feeds into the fear of the Lord? Because if we're not placing ourselves and elevating God's ways and what He wants above everything else, then we will tend to reduce our size of God. And I think the fear of the Lord, one of the ways we grow that is by increasing our understanding of who He is and the beauty and the wonder of who He is. And obviously His Word is one of those ways that we do that, and prayer, you've already talked about that, but also is church. I mean, at TeenStreet, we encourage you, get plugged into a church. If you're not plugged into a church, get plugged into a church. Get alongside other believers and be built up in your faith. You are not called to do the Christian life alone.
Yeah.
You're called to do it in community. And so if you're not connected to a church, our encouragement to you would be to plug in. Find other believers who are like-minded and really get plugged in that way.
Yeah. Do you have one more thing to add to that? No, great. What I wanted to do really briefly is, do you mind if I pull back the curtain a little bit? Some of you may be wondering, how does this work? Like, how do we preach the way that we do? How do we get to do what we do? And just to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, just to allow you guys to see into our world a little bit and our lives a little bit. This is what we do. We sit down, we open a Bible, we read Scripture, and we just hash it out.
Yeah.
We pray, and we talk about it. We're like, that verse hit me.
Yeah.
And this is why it hit me.
Yeah.
And that will spark, Sarah will be like, actually, that connects to this part of Scripture over here. And that connects to here. And Dan will be like, oh, I've never seen that connection before. But that verse that you referred to reminded me of this time that I was in a situation similar. And then I'll connect it to something else. And we start to open up, and the Bible starts to just flesh out like this flower that keeps opening and opening, and more truth, more beauty, more excitement. And it's beautiful. But when you start to look back at where we went, it's like, it's this beautiful tapestry. And what we do then is kind of be like, when it comes to preparing a series like we've done through Exodus, is just going to be like, well, Sad, that was beautiful what God was sharing and opening to you. Do you want to talk about that? You want to take a few minutes and talk about that? Dan, that verse that really illuminated to you, God gave you a real insight there. Do you want to share on that? And this one was particularly, it was a burden for me. And I just felt that the teens in this room at TeenStreet need to hear this. I want to hone in on that, but I want to get your input on that too. So why don't we do that bit together? And so just pulling back the curtain a little bit, if you have Christian friends around you, I would love to encourage you to be part of a small group, some sort of Bible study group, where you open a Bible, you pray, you read a portion, and you just hash it out. It is so much fun.
Yeah.
I am just so encouraged every time we do that. And we get to share with you guys a portion of what comes out of that. But even part of that is it just blesses me.
Yeah.
So I just want to encourage that.
And even just the idea of that becomes the way you read the Bible.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost funny because, like, Rach and I read the Bible at night before we go to bed. And a big shout out to study Bibles. If you haven't got a study Bible, an NIV study Bible or an ESV study Bible, they're awesome. They're super helpful because they come with notes down the bottom of the page. So you're like, oh, what does that mean? And it's super practical, and the people who contribute to it, they know the types of questions you're asking. Super helpful. But the goal when I'm reading, I'm like, I want to push in a little bit. It seems counterintuitive to the pain. What is God challenging me on through this text? What stands out to me, and what needs to change in my life? You know, as I read this, I'm like, ooh, that's speaking into pride. Or that's speaking in, for example, to the fear of man. I need to grow in the fear of God. And we believe that all Scripture is God-breathed. That's what we believe as Christians. It's like, unlike any other book, there's no other book in the world like the Bible. So every time you open it, you can be anticipating and praying that God will speak directly to you through His Word. And there might be something, you might read the same passage 1,000 times, and God can keep speaking to you through His Word. That's what we believe. It's not like you go, yep, read that. What am I up to now? Yep, I've read it all. I'm done. Is there the second Bible? No. We go back. We just keep reading the Bible. and God keeps revealing more of himself. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing that's come to mind when you're talking about what you can do sitting in the Bible. When we compiled the net group studies that you guys have been working on, there's a rhythm that is established in each of those studies, and you can tell what the rhythm is by the icons. There's the pray, there's the life download, there's the I can't think of it. Where's Jesus, the cross icon? Can you share with someone else? If you take that same rhythm and you read and you grab a group of friends and you might say, work through the book of Romans, or work through another book in the Old Testament. What you're doing is you basically just apply that. Okay, so what's the life download? What application can I take of this? And before too long, the Bible becomes this living, breathing, dynamic piece of literature that just comes to life, and it breathes life into you. Our heart here at TeenStreet, and it has been since the day dot, is that the Bible becomes something that we just embrace daily. Daily. It is rich. It is so rich. It's not just an ancient book of cool stories. It is God's living word to us, a download from God's heart to ours. And it's interesting, when we first looked at exploring the book of Exodus, was back in for 2020, we wanted to do it. But then we couldn't because of COVID. And we sat and did this. And we got some really beautiful things out of it. When we revisited it for 2022, we sat and we did this, and we got a whole nother level of beautiful things that we missed the first time around when we did it 2 years ago. We're like, whoa, did not even see that last time. That is the beauty of God's living word.
Yeah.
It is fresh when you come at it all the time. You just repeat it, like you go back to the Bible. You may have heard the story, but you may not have heard God's download for you in that story for that particular time that you're reading it.
I love it. What we're going to do is pause this, because you can probably tell that we could be here for a while. it just gets better and gets better and gets better.
Yeah.
And they're probably sick of hearing us.
Yes.
So what we should do is we should get somebody else up here.
Oh, let's do this.
We have some very, very special guests for you guys tonight. We have an empty stool, but we've got an extra stool for two incredibly special people that some of you guys may know, and we want you to give these beautiful people a warm TeenStreet welcome.
Yeah! Woo! Welcome! Hello, you fabulous people.
Oh, man.
Oh.
So this is Andrew and Nat Carnell. These are some incredible people who have been such role models to all of us and so many people in this room. We're so glad to have you back. If you guys don't know who these people are, Andrew was the previous TeenStreet director, and together you guys have just ministered to us and to so many people through the years. It's so good to have you back, and maybe you can kind of share a little bit about who you guys are for those who are new, and your journey with TeenStreet and that sort of thing.
Well, it's great to be back at TeenStreet, so thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
The first thing I'd like to say is, we've led TeenStreet for what was 12 years, and it was a real privilege. God is so good, and we've had the privilege of doing that and meeting so many fabulous people. So that's who we are, a little bit of us. We've got 4 kids that are around here too. Firstly, I want to say my heart is full. I've come here today and I've seen teams that we, knew that are leading now, which is amazing. I see a tech team up there that have given up a week of their lives to use their skills to serve you because they love Jesus. I've seen people come from Melbourne all the way up. Just stop and think about that. They've given a week of their life to come up. So good. The champions for me, the ones that fill my heart the most, are coaches that you are. I just think you give up a week of your life to invest in the young people. Amazing. Great job. Give a hand up for your coaches. Amazing. But they're not truly, there's another champion of champions that I love to see. Like, I mean, your boundaries team. You might not think this,
Yeah.
but
Dead
just
set
think
legend.
about it. These guys give up a week out of their work, could be their holidays, to come and walk late at night to just make sure you're safe. I mean, who does that? We're talking about loving Jesus. I mean, these are people, they're not doing that for themselves. I don't think they're doing that stuff. They do it because they love Jesus and they love you.
Yeah.
So can we give a hand out for
Yeah.
our boundaries team? And two things I'd say is, I say every time you see them, just encourage them. And secondly, do all that you can to make their job easy, and that'll be great for them. That'll be awesome. That just fills my heart because I see people who love Jesus. So yeah, I don't know, Nat, do you have... Oh, let me just share, and then I'll just give hand over. The other thing that I love is Jesus, and I've been blessed by a room of 400 people worshipping Jesus, learning about Jesus. There's this very cool little parable that Jesus shares. He says, the kingdom of God is like a treasure that this man finds. He finds this treasure, and he finds it, and he buries it, and he sells all that he has to go and buy that field so he can have that treasure. And within it is this one little word. It says, with joy, he sold everything to get that treasure. And when I'm hearing, like, amazing teaching, these guys are awesome this morning. I won't forget that cross, the wall, the room, the door that changed into the cross. Amazing. How good is Jesus? That's what he does for us. The red paint, you're covered by the blood of Jesus, forgiven. Like, amazing, isn't it? Jesus is that treasure. He is that treasure for you. And there are a lot of things that get your attention in this world for your heart, but I want to tell you there is no treasure like Jesus. No treasure like Jesus. And it excites me, and my heart is full today, to hear you learning about Jesus, worshipping Jesus, because I know your heart is made for Jesus, and you'll find fullness of life when you find your heart in Jesus. And then just finally, my last little conversation. And it's great, it really matches in with what you guys were sharing about. You know, there are a lot of other gods in your world that'll attract your attention, and how do you not follow after that? I caught up with a good friend this afternoon, Demetrius, and I asked him, mate, how can I pray for you? And he said, could you pray that I would find Jesus as my bread of life, that I won't hunger and thirst after other things. But the reality is, if you fill your life with Jesus and you have him, if you listen to his word, if you follow him, if you're in communion with him, you won't chase after those things. When you are full with a really good meal, you don't chase after other foods, do you? Because you're full.
Yeah.
Fill your lives with Jesus, and all of those things that demand your attention, they won't become so attractive because you're full with Jesus. And in Demetrius's heart, he realized, if I know Jesus as my bread of life, I won't chase after those other things. And that's why I love what's here. Like, I love TeenStreet, because I know there are people with that heart that say, I want Jesus, and I want to fill my life with Jesus, that I won't be attracted to the things of the world. Now, we fall down. Now, we make mistakes. And Jesus loves us, and he's so gracious to us. But there's that heart to continue to chase after Jesus and to fill our lives, even as young people. You might be 12 years old here, but I tell you, you can chase after Jesus. You can serve Jesus. You can love Jesus. And so we are truly blessed to be here today. It's amazing. I've been so encouraged. Even the teaching this morning, I'll watch that video again. How good was the teaching? These guys are doing such an amazing job as well. So thanks so much for having us. I'm privileged to be here.
Such a blessing.
But I've spoken too much, and my wife, she's the one that carries all the wisdom, and she'll give it to you probably in 2 minutes. I just probably spoke for 7 minutes. She can give it to you in 2 minutes. So I should let Nat share as well.
Look, my only word that I have tonight is come. And there's an invitation to you guys to come to Jesus. and not just because, not just for the beauty. Well, not just for. That's not what I'm saying. Let me start again. He's calling you to come, but the reason is because he's come for you. And you get to have a week where you get to see this beautiful picture of God's rescue plan for the Israelites, how God came and rescued his people out of slavery in Egypt and into the promised land. And we also have been given more than that in Jesus, a rescue for us from our sin, from all of the things that trap us and drag us down and take life from us. He's given us Jesus, and that's our rescue from that to life and hope and peace and joy and fullness and eternal life. We've been given that gift, and the offer is there for you now. I have come for you. This is what Jesus is saying. I've come for you. And now come to me. I'm calling you to come. Come and take my offer of life. That's what I'm holding out to you. And that's what you get to learn about this week. And I pray that every single one of you will consider the invitation that you've been given this week to come. And that many of you will choose, if you haven't already, will choose to come to Jesus. Because that is the best and most important decision that you can ever make in your life. And so that's the burden that I have, is this word come. And that's the offer that is held out to you all week this week. And for the rest of your life is there. Come to me. I am the bread of life, not me, Jesus. He is the bread of life, and he is welcoming you and calling you to come to him.
And just finally on that too, like I just remember as I was thinking about what maybe to share, I know there are probably some of you that haven't made that choice to follow Jesus yet, which is fine. And then you're in a really good place. You've got a great opportunity to hear that. But as Nat said, that invitation to you is to come to Jesus. You're learning about him. You might have your questions. You might have your doubts. Talk those through. But I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, there will not be anything in this world that will satisfy you like Jesus. You can look in all sorts of places, but this week you have an opportunity to come to the bread of life, the water of life, the one that can satisfy. And I know there are some here that you've never made that decision to accept Jesus, and I want to say with Nat, to say that invitation is there for you. Just from the bottom of my heart, just choose Jesus. I mean, he has created you. He loves you. He knows the best for you. And that's my prayer for you, that you'll take up that invitation and find that he is the greatest treasure you could ever imagine. So great. So good to be with you. Really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah. So thanks so much.
So good to have you guys here. It's just such an encouragement. I know even just seeing you guys in person has been such a blessing to us all this week. And so I'm sure there's probably maybe one or two people just want to say hi to you before you guys have to leave tonight. But why don't we invite the worship band to come on up. Just wanted to pray for you guys and thank you for your ministry to us as these guys come up. Father, thank you for your love and your blessing over Andrew and Nat. Thank you for how you have worked in them and worked through them in such powerful ways through TeenStreet over those 12 years. And Father, I can just see your heart for truth just flow through just how they shared just now, that it all points to Jesus. Life is found in Jesus. He that has the Son has life. He that does not have the Son does not have life. So come to Jesus.
Yeah.
May that be true of us, and may that resonate in our hearts. Thank you for Andrew and Nat. Thank you that their ministry continues, and thank you for the ministry that you're doing through them even now in Jesus' name.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys.